My name's Richard. This is the Orchestration Script Spring 2019 Research Talk. Yeah, so start off with some definitions so we know what we're talking about generally. First, orchestration, which is how a teacher manages in real time multi-layered activities in multi-constraints contexts. Essentially, it's how a teacher manages a student such that the student has the most learning. And from there, we can have an orchestration strategy, which is a specific implementation or how a teacher will actually implement that management. For example, a teacher can notice a student has reread the same page in a textbook multiple times, and from that, infer that the student is struggling with that concept. You can call that an orchestration trigger. From there, the teacher can decide to go to the student and talk to them about the concept, maybe read over their shoulder and ask them questions about the concept, maybe break it down and explain it to them. This would be the orchestration action or the intervention that the teacher would implement. And overall, this is what a teacher does in order to make sure that their student has the most learning. Now, motivation for this problem, and let's start by just talking about a problem that generally will occur, and that's constrained mentor time and student need for orchestration. We take for granted that students need mentoring. They need a mentor to teach them how to plan, how to conduct research. They just need orchestration as a whole. However, they run into the problem of constrained mentor time in that many mentors, in the context of DTR especially, are graduate students who are conducting their own research, going to research talks, and in multiple occasions, mentoring many students, as indicated by this diagram, where the mentor is in the middle. They could be conducting research or going to talks, and that takes a lot of time. And they're also mentoring many students, which also takes up a lot of time. What this constrained time means that each student wouldn't necessarily get all of the orchestration that they necessarily need. And this means orchestration failure has happened, where essentially the student needed mentor help or a mentor intervention for some reason, but the mentor couldn't detect that the student needed help. Or needed an intervention, and they didn't notice it. And because of that, the student learning was harmed in some way. So our conceptual approach to solve the issue of constrained mentor time is to factor out machine executable orchestration strategies. If you imagine the set of all orchestration strategies that a mentor could implement, then there's a few of them, and imagine a few of them have, these orchestration strategies are composed of that orchestration trigger, what the mentor looks for, and the intervention or the orchestration action, what the mentor will do. If we can find certain orchestration strategies that can be decomposed into a trigger and action that are machine representable, then we can take that orchestration strategy and factor it out, have a machine running it in the background, and in that way essentially make a mechanical mentor that's monitoring the students and seeing if they need orchestration. Essentially, we can encode the triggers and the actions to digitize the orchestration strategy. Well, this is difficult because these orchestration strategies have to come from mentors, and it's difficult to have the mentors write these orchestration scripts in a way that has high precision and high recall. Precision and recall being defined in the statistical sense, where recall is given the set of all. And a few more definitions. A target scenario is the scenario that a trigger represents. So that's the situation that a mentor wants to know about. So recall, given all the scenarios that happen, we want to get as many of the target scenarios as possible. High precision, given all of the situations that a script goes off on, or that a script returns, we want as many of them to be the given target scenario. We want as many of them to be the given target scenario as possible. So we want to help mentors write these machine orchestration scripts that are that adhere very well to their high-level goals of helping the student in their learning. So this means actually detecting when the student is struggling and detecting when the student is struggling. There's also an issue, another challenge is we don't really know when a mentor has written an accurate detector. So they can, and we've talked about taking these machine primitives and using them to write a detector, but it's hard to know that the detector that a mentor has written is actually accurate given in capturing the target scenario. It could be the case that the detector they've written just happens to go off 99% of the time when the target scenario is occurring. And in some sense, that doesn't really matter as long as it's working, but we'd also be interested in finding out what's the best way to write an accurate detector. Another challenge is, how do we allow mentors to explore other methods of orchestration? So different mentors have different methods of orchestration, and they may even decompose different they may decompose the same orchestra target scenario into different triggers. We want mentors to be able to play around with their ideas of what triggers are necessary in order to write more robust orchestration scripts. And finally, how do we balance resources, that's mentor time, within the classroom ecosystem? And this arises because a lot of the times the intervention is just going to a mentor in the first place. However, this doesn't deal with the issue that the mentor himself, him or herself, is constrained in their time, and we want to make sure that we're not overburdening the mentor as well. Contributions this quarter is an interface prototype, a study for that interface, and a study of the scripts. And the first study, the study for the interface, produced a set of orchestration scripts, and we ran a second study on the scripts that were produced by the mentors. So going on to the actual design arguments for orchestration scripts, our core characteristics are that a mentor creates a detector by composing primitives in a way that captures a target scenario. A primitive being the basic machine detectable unit. Essentially, it's hours logged and hours put into the sprint log, or whether or not a certain canvas section is filled out. It's the basic unit that a machine can detect. And mentors will take all of these basic things that a machine can detect, these primitives, and compose them together logically with ands and ors in such a way that in a way that they feel accurately captures the target scenario that they want to they want to be notified of. And mentors can attach an orchestration action to this detector, and this is the intervention. So it could be anything from message to the student to message to the mentor, or it's a very wide set of things that the mentor could do in terms of the orchestration action. And then the interface model. This was a lot of what was redone this quarter in terms of changing the prototype from last quarter. Now we have a page of primitives categorized by their documents, and we show mentors examples of the document of interest. So if they're choosing primitives from a specific document, we will show them an example of that document. And we've also retooled the logical connectives a little bit. So this is a significant redesign from last quarter, whereas the last quarter design was very constrained and had very deep drop-down menus, and that was how mentors would select their primitives. The feedback that we gotten from that was that it wasn't very intuitive, and it was oftentimes difficult to find primitives. And it also didn't allow for a natural composition of detectors, where it just seemed that mentors didn't think in that drop-down sort of way. And I'm kind of glossing over this because I don't think it's too important for the purpose of this talk. And overall, it was just poorly designed. So we made a new one based off of a finder and the arguments made in there. And from that, we made a more natural mapping between the mentor's thought process and the actual composition of orchestration scripts. And that's what gave us this. So these are the primitive blocks, where this is just a page where the different primitive blocks are categorized under the document that they correspond under, and mentors can forage in this page for the primitives that they want. And these are the logical connectors. So given primitives, mentors can look for logical ors of the primitives, logical ands. Ifs are meant to construct the overall detector. Nots are the opposite. Sets are used for intermediary compositions. And this is an example orchestration script that one mentor wrote from the study, where they used the if to construct a detector, and we had them write in if a detector wasn't present that they wanted and it was feasible for us to actually have that detector, we had them write it in. And then this is the composition that they ended up creating. This leads us right into study one, or how we try to observe how this first interface interacted with mentors. Our high-level goals were to understand what is the mentor thought process in writing an orchestration script, and how do mentors interact with our tool to translate their high-level strategy to a detector. So in terms of the mentor thought process, we want to know the steps that a mentor takes to take their high-level orchestration strategy and decompose it, turn it into these low-level detectors. If we have a good enough understanding of the steps these mentors can take, then we can design interface features that support these steps and help them write good orchestration scripts, for some definition of the word good that we'll come to later. And that leads us to our second point of, well, how do mentors actually interact with this tool? Is it helping them? Is it hindering them in certain scenarios? We're interested in that as well. The evaluation methods, we were trying to learn, again, the process a mentor goes through and how can we help to translate their orchestration strategy into detectors, and how can we help them in this translation process. Study setup and methods, the mentors presented with the interface asked for target scenarios that they themselves would like to know about. Essentially, the question was, this is not verbatim, but what situations that your student, given the set of situations your student may encounter while they're working on their project, which situations would you like to be notified of when that situation occurs? And from there, we gleaned 3 target scenarios that a mentor would like to know about, and they were asked to build detectors for these target scenarios in a talk aloud manner, so talking as they build that detector. Core findings for this is we found that mentors actually have a fairly easy time determining the primitives that they need that are relevant to the given target scenario. So they kind of intuitively know what the documents may look like when a target scenario is occurring. This is taken from a post-study interview, and certain reasons that this comes about is because a lot of the times these target scenarios are things that mentors have experienced recently, and because of that, it's very fresh in their mind what the documents look like when a given scenario is occurring. Furthermore, sometimes mentors draw from the second core findings that mentors write detectors based on their personal experience. So this could be from when they had a coworker or another mentee that encountered this target scenario, and this is what their documents looked like. Mentors would often model their detectors based off of what they'd experienced before. And finally, mentors may want to do comparisons of documents that I won't know about. Essentially, this kind of ties in with the idea that there's a lot of things that mentors may want to detect, but it's not possible for me to ideate all of those at once. Ditto for comparisons, where mentors may want to do creative things in terms of comparing across, say, the Canvas and the sprint log that we don't fully support because we just didn't know that they wanted to do that. So discussion and next steps. The limitations of this study is that although this was a good test to see if the interface could help a mentor write an orchestration script, it didn't test whether the mentor could write a good orchestration script. So we need to know, well, what's the quality of the orchestration script in terms of precision and recall, so that we can actually evaluate the effectiveness of our interface. So what needs to be done next? Very naturally, it's to gather information about the accuracy of these scripts, accuracy being precision and recall, which leads us right into study 2, which is on the actual orchestration scripts themselves, which, given a mentor's OS orchestration script, what's its precision, what's its recall, does this detector that they wrote actually capture the target scenario? Detector is kind of a swap around word for the trigger portion of an orchestration script, but yeah. What interface features affected the composition of this script? So essentially, how good is the orchestration script? Is the orchestration script actually capturing the target scenario? And what led the orchestration script to be good or bad? That's what we wanted to learn. For the study setup and methods, we conducted this by essentially Wizard of Ozing the system model. Essentially, I acted as the actual system and scanned the DTR documents looking for the primitives indicated by the mentor orchestration scripts. We imposed the second rule, which was we discounted documents that were stale. That means, it's a typo, but not touched for more than 3 days. And this was for some reason, to maintain accuracy to a certain extent. And this could have been tweaked later on, but yeah. And questionnaires were sent to a select few students, both for situations in which the orchestration script triggered, meaning that the target scenario was thought to have been occurring, and in which it didn't trigger, in which we thought the target scenario wasn't occurring. From this, we have our core findings, which were that with nuance, scripts that mentors thought would be good were good, and scripts that mentors thought wouldn't be good weren't good, with nuance. So starting with the first one of the scripts was that was related to pair research, and it was asking mentors to the mentor wanted to make sure that their mentee was writing good pair research help requests. And at a high level, he wanted to compare the words in the pair research help request to the words in the sprint log. If there weren't many words in common, then that indicated that the help request wasn't effective. And generally speaking, when this orchestration triggered, it was the target scenario that was actually occurring, which is good. And in the questionnaires, when we asked, well, does the fact that we wrote this script based off of commonalities in terms of words between the sprint log and the help request, does that actually indicate that the help request isn't necessarily good? It was generally met with positive responses. However, the study was very limited in size, so we could definitely do it with more people, and there wasn't a clear measure of the intervention. So sure, maybe this wasn't the best help request, but we don't know what the mentor would have done in this situation to make it a better help request. And in fact, in certain situations, we're not sure if this was exactly hurtful to the student in any way. So there's nuance there. And to the second point, that the scripts that mentors thought wouldn't be good weren't good, this referred to a script that a mentor wrote to ensure that their students were slicing effectively. And although while they were writing the script, they did point out that this might not be the most accurate script because they were pulling out numbers. The script was based off of number of days into the sprint and number of tasks accomplished by like day X of the sprint. So like say if less than Y tasks were finished by day X of the sprint, then that means the student's not slicing effectively. There's nuance there because one, we don't really know what effective slicing necessarily looks like, and two, well, there's general disagreement when surveys were sent out asking about or like talking over what is this script, do you think the script is accurate, does it actually capture the target scenario? So it wasn't a good script. The mentor knew it wasn't a good script, but the act of like slicing and slicing effectively is something we may want to know about, and we're just kind of unsure of it as a whole. So bad script, but the mentor knew it was a bad script. But there was also nothing in the interface that would necessarily allow us to write a good script for this target scenario. Which leads us to our discussion in that for the limitations, the primary limitation is that we only know the quality of the scripts. We don't know why that script was written in a way that was high or low quality. So if the script was high quality, we don't exactly know why it was written in a way that it was high quality. If it was low quality, we also don't know why. And that's an issue because we want to trace this back to our interface features and say, okay, well, this feature allowed the mentor to write the script in a way that was good, and this feature hindered mentors in writing the script, and that's what led the script to be low quality. And that was the limitation of this study. And is definitely like on the list of things that need to be done next in terms of determining, is the interface actually effective? Which is the first bullet point of linking the outcomes of the script to the interface. Moreover, this study did not incorporate very rich interventions into the scripts. They were more or less limited to messaging the mentor and telling them, hey, this situation is occurring. And while many times mentors are going to put that as their intervention, we'd want to know if there's other things that mentors could want to do. Moreover, we didn't have effective tooling to measure the actual effectiveness of the intervention or any A/B test to ask the mentor or the students, what do you think would have happened without this intervention, and what do you think would have happened with this intervention? So overall takeaways from the work this quarter. First, from the prototype redesign, we learned the importance of natural composition of primitives. It led to more work on the creator side, so my side in terms of writing down all of these primitives, but it also made the composition much more natural, which is great for mentors. Second, mentors may write orchestration scripts from their experiences, and this could affect the quality of the scripts. We don't exactly know whether this is good or bad. It's definitely something to dig into. And then as a whole, taken from last quarter, that orchestration is important. Orchestration can help a learning community function more effectively. That it's good to have, if we can get these orchestration scripts working well, it could actually be very, very beneficial. Especially given this limited study that we did, we saw that, in one instance, a mentor did intervene just to check in, and it was potentially effective, which we don't know about yet, but that's information that we would like to dig into next time if there is a next time. Key implications of what this work did broadly, it kind of shows that we could have orchestration scripts in practice, maybe. Running those myself, it definitely was difficult to actually cover that wide breadth of information, and it was fairly tedious. So it'd definitely be nice to have that done by a machine. But from the number of times that the scripts triggered, it seems they have a propensity to trigger less often than necessary. So in terms of measuring the disruptance, it seems the orchestration scripts won't have a negative effect. So it could be potentially possible that orchestration scripts are good in terms of limiting their damage. This needs to be looked into because we only had 2 orchestration scripts running. So there could be the potential that there is a harmful orchestration script that gets written. That's just something we need to dig into. But this initial forage into can that happen seems it could be possible. But we definitely need more data on precision and recall, and we definitely still need data on the effectiveness of the intervention. So is it effective, what the mentors are doing? And I'm way over time. Thank you for listening.